How's Amsterdam? Cold over there too?
Yeah, today was first snow here.
Oh, hey, we got our first snow
Magical.
like 4 days ago.
Yeah, Ranger's
Congratulations.
finally here.
It's also baby's first snow. I took baby out and I was like, hey, this is what it
Oh,
is. I don't know if you've done the same.
yeah, I've done. She's too small to understand this.
Hey, Em, long time no
Hi,
Hey,
see.
John. Good to
Oh my
see
gosh.
you.
Hey.
see
Hi,
ya.
everyone.
Hi.
All right. I think this is the crew for these next 30 minutes at least. And then I think Farid is jumping at 30 later. And our one of our internal ops people is also like, hey, I saw you doing an ops roundtable. It's like, okay, cool. She just has like a daily ops stand up and then will join us as well. Um, let's do intros and then we can jump into it. So I think I know all of you in like many different worlds, and I've been wanting to bring you all together for such a long time. So this is really exciting. It's like literally all over the world. So you all know me, but I'm John. I lead our solutions and our marketing. I've worn many hats. CSM, which I think a few of you I interacted with as a CSM, and then leading professional services, which I think is like the other two. And then I moved to the marketing team maybe a little over a year ago. And I don't know if y'all know this, but our head of product Lane is now the head of marketing. So I know I've always like straddled both sides of the house, being like UX design, but also loving to like get the word out. So super excited for that transition over here, which means I get to do like marketing stuff like roundtables. Um, I will pass it off to Brian, and then you want to popcorn from there?
Sure, sounds good. Hey, everybody, I'm Brian. I'm a founder of a new AI consulting firm called Drivetrain Revenue. We basically teach go-to-market teams how to use AI with Coda to make their sales and marketing teams more effective.
Great.
Prior to that, I ran an ops lab for 5 years called Super Synchronous, which was dedicated to Coda, and a tool called Xano, where we did ops design for all kinds of different parts of the business. And I'm super excited to be learning here with you all. I absolutely adore Coda. We're super excited about where we are with 4.0, and I think this year is going to be real fun. I'll popcorn it to Anne.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you guys. I'm Anne. I am based in the Bay Area, and my background is really building PMO teams, but I've done that across a lot of different types of industries. So I actually started in the nonprofit world, working in art museums, segued that over into biotech, worked across marketing, design, and product, which is where I met John and where we implemented Coda at 23andMe. And through all that, realized I'm most interested in creating high-performing teams. And so I've actually segued recently into the employee experience and HR space at Adobe, and have been establishing our first ever PMO office here for our global EX team. And I'm really focused on how can we help create high-performing teams in the business, especially at a time when we're moving so quickly and working in the AI space. So has been a wild ride, but all have had this kind of thread of ops throughout.
Congrats
And
on
I
your
will
move, Anne.
popcorn.
I don't think we've chatted since you joined.
I know. It's been a long time, I'm realizing. I'll popcorn over to Ariana.
Hey everybody, I'm Ariana. Like all of you, I'm an operations nerd. I work as a fractional chief operating officer. So my ops world is end-to-end business operations. So I use Coda and I implement essentially operations across people's businesses from that high level viewpoint. But I also founded Secret Ops, which is a podcast that uncovers the world of operations because nobody knows what we do and what we do is so important. So my world is ops. And the more that we can get the word out with all the stuff that we do behind the scenes, I think the better. So I'll pass it to Ilia. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, nice to meet you, everyone. I'm currently working at Miro in the head of product operations role. And I think I'm in the product operations for about 4 years. Before it was also a B2B SaaS unicorn company. And basically that was my first touch with product operations. And I think I grew there to understand like what is it for me and how it can help. benefit the business. Before I had quite a long journey in the product management area, product leadership, and also I'm passionate about the strategy topic, planning topics. So they, I think, all are incorporated in the product ops. So yeah, excited to be here and meet all of you.
And a new father.
Congratulations.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining after bedtime, before bedtime.
It's like every hour before and after. So.
Yeah, I tell you. I don't know if everyone knows, but I have a 6-month-old upstairs. But I did sleep almost through the entire night, so you'll get there, Ilia. You'll definitely get there.
Looking forward.
Cool. Well, we have a whole bunch of hot topics, but I think what I'll do just to kick it off is I would love to hear all of your stories of what got you into ops. I know that there's like sprinkles here and there. And then what are you excited about this year? I know, Ariana, you're like the future of operations, so maybe you can like tease what you want to talk about for the future. But yeah, what are you excited about for this year? I can start. So I guess I didn't give a little history. My first operations role, was actually my first job out of college. And I was reporting to the CEO and VP of sales and marketing. And they had just purchased this new like cloud CRM called Salesforce. I'd never heard of it. And they're like, we're digitizing everything. We're moving from like an on-premise like application to like the cloud. And SaaS was like a big thing for them. I don't know. It was like backwoods of Vermont. But I was in charge of implementing Salesforce for a team that like barely used technology. Like it was Rolodex sales team, and you had to like poke and prod to get them to update, and all the reporting was like months after instead of live reporting. So yeah, that was my first entrance into ops. But where I actually started enjoying operations was I was working for Excello previously, and it was a service operations platform. And so I got to work with like hundreds of digital agencies implementing their like end-to-end operations. So kind of like what you're saying, Ariana, like end-to-end business ops from like the moment they meet a client all the way to like doing the project management, invoicing, and billing. And they're previously using like hundreds of different apps, and Excello was like the one platform. So it was so fun having those conversations about like the end-to-end, because I don't know, my previous experience or like talking to other people was like you get like these little slippers when you have like these very verticalized applications, and then being able to talk with folks that was like, oh, you're having like CEO conversations, even if it's not the CEO. And so I really love that. And when I came to Coda, it's basically the same thing. It's like, flexible surface. You basically get scope creep in any sort of conversation that you join. All right, that's me. Anyone can opt in next. Oh, sorry. What am I excited for this year?
Yeah,
This sort of stuff. Honestly, like I'm using my education stipend to like up my audiovisual, bring folks together. I like know so many people throughout the globe, and it's like kind of sad that everyone just like operates in their own little silos. So yeah, much more of this sort of stuff.
All right, I'll go next. Your mention of Rolodexes really struck a chord with me, actually, John, because one of the things that got me so passionate about operations in the first place was I mentioned my first role was in the museum world. And like, let me just say, they were operating like they were in the 80s. I mean, just the stark contrast with the tech world is pretty insane. Everything is literally manually kept files. There's like no software for program management. And so I just saw so much opportunity when I entered that world. I had an arts background. And really what drove me beyond just kind of the logistics of my own brain needing to make efficient was really the power of design to transform experiences and make content accessible. And so a big push in my early days was really how do we make design and content strategy more of a creative thought partner and a strategic thought partner to the very academically minded curators, and kind of took on this role helping to broker that relationship and really advocate for the user experience. I think the other thing that was really interesting about working in a museum is you're literally surrounded by your user at all times. Again, very different than the software world. I can't go to the bathroom without hearing some visitors talk about what they think about the installation or the art. And so that has just really created this through line throughout my time in operations of really advocating for design thinking and user-driven design. And that's really something that has sustained me throughout all of my roles. And I think the thing that most excites me now and what I'm really excited about for the year to come is this idea of high-performing teams and the role that ops and program management can help play in that. I think we are in such a cool era of striving for these really ambitious, really ambiguous projects around AI. Immense risks and unknowns, no regulations yet, and also kind of the added landscape of hybrid teams, and employees' motivations have really changed over the last few years with COVID. And so building high-performing, resilient teams is something that really excites me. I've seen environments where an idea can flourish because we're giving radical candor feedback and we have the right leadership in place to encourage healthy debate. And I've seen areas where teams are just set up to fail from the beginning because of toxic environments. And so I think what's most exciting for me in this year is what role can operations play in helping to create those conditions for success, both for project teams. And again, why I moved into employee experience is how do we create that at scale across teams that are grappling with some of the biggest challenges of the future. Should I popcorn, or does anybody want to take it? I will popcorn to Kristen to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I don't know if there was specific prompts that I missed.
It's an intro, and then we're just roundtabling around what got you into ops. What are you excited about for this year?
Cool. Yeah. So my name is Kristen. I am from Coda, and right now I manage our go-to-market tool stack. So everything from Salesforce, Outreach, all the different tools that our go-to-market teams use, from everything from actually procuring, managing renewals, as well as actually configuring the tools and coming up with a strategy with our data team of what needs to be done to enable all our sales, success, marketing teams. I already forgot the other half of this. What got me into ops? Yeah. So I would say the short answer is Salesforce. So I was doing Salesforce consulting. Yep. As my first kind of, I would say, real serious job. Really got into it. I studied management information systems in college, so it was like very kind of up my alley, and I enjoyed the technical part of it and having to understand and marry the business requirements with actually how do we build this and build this in a scalable way. So that got me into Salesforce. I continue in Salesforce consulting, and actually this is probably one of my first kind of more holistic ops roles. Yeah, I don't know who's gone, so feel free.
Yeah, I can move on with. Yeah, Ariana, do you want to go ahead?
No, Ilia, you go for it. There's a bit of a delay. All you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's first of all natural need to make things in order, structure, information, and yeah, that was with me, I think, the whole career. And I remember I was working in the cinema production studio, and it was like really messy when I just entered. And I remember that I already knew some things, how to use spreadsheets and how to organize everything, how to automate some things. Yeah, and it was a crazy journey. It was like pretty big studio, and yeah, like all of the process, working on the new pitches, ideas, through the whole alignment with all of the production. I was trying to organize this, and yeah, I think this is where I realized the need for that, especially for the businesses that do not have this by default. And then I worked mostly with B2B SaaS projects in companies, and there also, because I was leading product teams, and then I realized that everything I do, I usually do through the systems and people. So like people aspect is like management, coaching, leadership, driving, and growing people. And system part is about, okay, what is the environment? What is the structure? What are the data points? How we collect feedback? How we organize everything inside? So yeah, and when product operations was invented, I think for me that was kind of the legalization of my product leadership role, because like I was doing everything through people and systems, and product ops is a lot about people and systems. So I was like, yeah, I'm in. Here I am. Yeah.
I'm just hearing some typing background sound on it, so I'll mute myself. But I guess since I popped in, Ariana, we'll let you close us out. So my journey in ops began about 25 years ago, pre-internet. My dad came home and he said, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The bad news is that I've lost my job, and the good news is they're going to let me buy my division. He ran a subsidiary of a small company, and he had all the relationships. They decided to close the business down. He decided to take it home. So cue James Bond music. We went into the corporation. I got logged into a Fortran mainframe. I had no idea how to communicate with it. We eventually figured out how to download all of his contact data and bring it home. And it turned out that it was 100,000 records with no comma delimitation. So I had to go back and reconstitute all the data. And that was the start. And then we got Microsoft Access for Dummies, and I started building his business system. And the first one I built was terrible, and the second one barely worked, and the third one finally he started running the business on. And I kind of got hooked. We ended up building, because it was a very unusual business model, we ended up building the entire business system ourselves: finance, inventory management, people, billing. Even when the web came out, we built one of the first B2B e-commerce sites on top of it. And what I learned is that when you build these end-to-end systems, Ariana, as you do, there are these amazing benefits that happen to the entire business. Basically, everybody's job gets easier when everybody's job is connected. And I think a lot of times when people talk about silos between different departments, they don't realize just how much of that is actually driven by the fact that their systems don't talk to each other, and they're not really designed to. And it's one of the reasons I am a true believer in Coda. I do believe that Coda is the future in terms of resolving that challenge. The future of ops is something I could talk about for days, for sure. And I'm sure Ariana could as well. I'm sure we all could. But I think the thing that is near term in terms of 2024 is, we spend a lot of time with companies who've decided they're going to bring AI in and figure out how to use it. And I think most people don't realize just how new and novel that really is. John, your Salesforce experience really resonates for me. Just because the technology is available, just because the tools are there, it really means nothing. When you dedicate your life to ops mastery, as is often the case in mastering things, your concern becomes everything but ops, because that's what limits what you can or can't do. And so, I truly believe that culture is the decision maker in terms of how much you can benefit from any ops innovation, AI included. And we're spending all of our time as an education company helping organizations learn how to actually make AI happen for themselves. And it turns out that none of those problems are new. They're all the same classic adoption challenges, people feeling comfortable, a little mix of novel, a little mix of the familiar, being patient, letting people come to things in a way that feels organic to them. So back to why I love Coda. It's really great for us that with Coda, the tool is also the documentation, because we've learned that makes such a huge difference in people jumping back into something that they know they're supposed to do, but have actually entirely forgotten how it works. So I'm pretty pumped for this year. I think that ops in general, while we're still, I'm not even sure we're fifth class citizens yet in most companies, but while we're still pretty low on the totem pole, I think our ability to contribute and solve problems is really growing, and I'm excited about that. Ariana.
Thank you. First of all, I'm like really feeling this Brady Bunch vibe right now with the 6-panel Operations Brady Bunch. Can we like copyright it for us? So for me, I got into operations by accident, which I think a lot of operators kind of find themselves where they're just like, this thing sucks. I want to solve this problem. And then you're like, all right, to fix this, I have to learn this and go to this person. And oh, now I'm talking to leadership. And oh, now I'm an operations leader. And that just kind of happened by accident because I wanted to solve a bunch of problems. So that's how I stumbled into operations. My first like big leadership role was as a COO for a food startup. They made mini popcorn, delicious mini popcorn. And then 6 months after I joined, the founders went and got funding on Shark Tank. And then all of a sudden I was like figuring out how to make a supply chain and not really understanding or knowing what that was. And during that, I think I feel a lot of what you all are saying, technology, that piece was so clutch. And I didn't know how to work a remote. So like, what did I need to do? So I went to code school and learned full stack web development, and that technology piece plus the operations piece was like the dream team, you know, that really allowed me to understand how business worked in a deeper lens, but also have the tools to do something with it. So I was a creative technologist for a while, missed operations, went back into operations from a leadership level. And now I'm working as a fractional leader with other companies, small to mid-sized businesses. That's my sweet spot. I still love the hot mess. I want to still create clarity from chaos. But the best part is, I think the thing I'm most excited about and the thing I'm most jazzed about is building operations in global teams. So like, Anne, I was really hearing what you're saying. I think building operations across the business is yummy. It's a delicious challenge. Then let's make it global. And then it's even more challenging and really fun to figure out how to do that in an engaging way with global team members who are approaching it from different perspectives in different emerging markets. And all of those pieces together really get me excited for 2024. John, back to you.
We cannot hear you.
I think you're muted.
Yeah. That unmute button isn't in the panel of people. It's only on your own mic control.
Gosh.
Oh, wow.
Right?
I had universal control and I went to mute Anne and then I couldn't get back to unmute myself. Well, there we go. I am a technologist. No, I had hopped on earlier with Kristen and I was like, because I've never used this in a larger group setting. I was like, was it easy to get in? And she's like, yes. I'm like, did you have to download anything or anything? She's like, no. I was like, oh, okay, there's going to be no problem with this recording, right? You're like, great. Okay, cool. On to the hot topics. So I think maybe, Brian, you're the only one who joined when it was early day COVID and I was starting to host like no code, low code, Clubhouse sort of chats. And this is traditionally how we went about it. By the way, I'm no longer in Clubhouse if you're like trying to put a target on my back. And so we upvote, we focus on like what we want to talk about. It seems like strategic planning is the hottest topic right now, and we could probably talk about it for the rest of the time. I'm totally down for it. But if we get bored and want to move along, or if folks like Ariana really want to talk about the future of operations, which I'm totally down as well, we can elevate some of those topics. If we really like what's happening today, down to also do these on an ongoing basis, because there's like so many meeting topics here and there's so many other people who are interested in having these conversations, but are in like Australia or whatnot, and time zone just doesn't happen to work out. All right, on strategic planning, I have a ton of questions for y'all, and we don't have to popcorn, by the way. This is like open conversation. Let's like really dig into it. What's your approach? Maybe we start off with that, and then we can go into all of the other topics like OKRs and roadmaps and tool stack. Let's start there. So yeah, what's your approach to strategic planning? What do you think about it? How do you tackle it? You're smiling, Anne. Oh wait, you're still are you still muted? I need to
still has her mute. Yeah.
Mute somehow. Oh my god.
Okay, I found the button. Brian, you were about to go. I'm gonna let you go first.
I was just going to jump in with a light comment to kick us off, which is, when I started, and I think we're all a little bit wired this way. We're system thinkers, right? We like puzzles. And I started out thinking of a business as a system that people worked in. And I think the biggest change in my thinking about strategic planning is really my biggest change in ops generally, which is I now think of businesses as people generating systems all the time. So that's really helped me shift my locus when I'm engaging with team members, because so much from an ops perspective, so much of your strategic planning really is engaging your stakeholders and understanding what they're trying to do, and then what does enablement look like. And invariably people will say, oh, well, I've got this Google sheet that I'm using, or like there's always this kind of apology that they have these personal systems that they're using, which is how they figure out what's up. And then they need to do all this translation work to get it into official channels and systems. But I really love that people generate their own systems, because what I'm always looking for is, what's the thing that you're doing differently in your own system than what you do in the ones you're supposed to use. And what I have learned over time is that the difference is almost always what's actually important and different about the organization. So, Anne, I'd be super curious to hear your perspective on this, given that you're looking at it from, a lens that many of us don't necessarily have, which is from, both an experience, an event, a location, a nonprofit. There's a lot going on there that you're doing. So from a strategic planning perspective, I think the thing that I always look for is, what did we learn about what's different about what we do and how we think, and how can we bring that to the forefront of how we design what we're going to do next, instead of making it next year's excuse that, I'm sorry, I got to go show you this other thing that I have that I use to actually figure out what it is I want to do.
I will piggyback off of that. We're in the midst of annual and strategic planning right now, so very top of mind. And I like what you were saying, Brian, around there is this very human element of it where, hi, I'll point it to you next to introduce yourself, Farid. Where I've worked not just in the PMO capacity, but oftentimes as chief of staff to the leader of that organization as well. And if I know anything about strategic planning, it is that they're going to change their mind eventually, or something new is going to happen in the market that's going to make you change course. And so how do you build systems that are really flexible to bring the right amount of structure that you need to make progress in the short term, but leave you open to pivoting course or making decisions in the future? And I think that looks different with every leader. But I've really started to not just think about like, what is best practice for strategic planning, but how do I build something that's going to be comfortable for this leader and work for this team or this industry that I'm in? And so really trying to get a lot more human-centered to the process instead of just the tactical side of my brain. But let me bump it over to our new member to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I had another call. So, I'm Farid. I'm located in California. I work as design ops consultant at EPAM. I'm also community advocate at Figma and Coda. This is like two main favorite tools for brainstorming and synthesizing data and like connecting the dots. That's me.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I love that this is getting more and more squares. I'm just obsessed. This is so exciting. I'm gonna
sorry
give my
about your Brady Bunch.
I know. It's okay. We just need one more, John. So like let's call in one more operator.
Okay, come on.
My kind of like, so I'm dealing with small to mid-sized businesses. So strategic planning, annual planning is going to look very different. And sometimes I'm working with leaders who've never done it before, right? Or it's lived in their heads, but they've never distilled that into the greater team. So my responsibility coming in is to, first of all, get them to articulate it in a simple way that they can understand it. Because again, their brain is bubbling with all this strategy, but they don't really know how to articulate it. And then I have to help them connect it with actioning in the team. So that's where I sit, is like usually educating and sherpaing people through that first time. So I guess, first of all, like OKRs, and we'll talk about objectives and key results. I think it really freaks people out because I'll always be like, yeah, let's do the OKR method. And I could just see them kind of glaze over. But then when I say, all right, let's figure out goals for the year and how we're going to track that, all of a sudden I can like, they can really kind of get that in their brains a little bit easier. So part of it is like, let's just get rid of any of the wording or the acronyms that freak us out. Let's get it to the heart of what we're trying to do this year. And then let's keep it simple, right? The first thing is they want like 10 goals, 5 things. It's like, no, let's get like top 3. And then let's figure out how we're going to track those things. When you're able to distill it into a simple manner, then it makes team adoption so much easier. It makes that communication easier. It makes the workplace culture better. But the job, at least for me as an operator, is like, let's keep forcing leadership to make it simpler, until anybody can understand what they can do. Leaders love strategy, and I love it too. Maybe not as much as them. But the key is like, how do we take all these kind of buzzwords that they've got floating and make it actionable? But that's also because, again, like that's what I do. I want to make sure that end to end wise, we're actioning this thing and doing it in a way that people can engage. I'm sure we've all been a part of teams too, where people do not understand the goals, and then the team just kind of floats around and you're wasting resource on things that you don't want to be using. So how do we bypass all of that? That's ultimately my goal and my pro tip with goal setting.
Yeah, I love the call out for simplicity. I feel like a lot of the times, especially when you like over structure or you have a framework come in, people are like, oh, I have to fit things into here. And some of the best strategy I've seen is just like a 1-page document. It's like, it's super flexible. You get the ideas down. It's like, that's the driving force. It's not the like 100 OKRs that come off the back end. So I'm curious, like coming back to your comment, Anne, about like flexibility, but still having structure. Like what do folks think about that? Like how do you like lay down the structure, but then allow it to like flow and move and put constraints on it at the same time?
Yeah, and I can share this. And in addition to what Ariana said, that simplicity, I think, is also the key here. And also, me, the question is how we can minimize the number of layers of different strategic entities. And yeah, it's helping small companies to strategize. But for example, at Miro, we have like almost 2,000 people. And previously we had like company OKRs, then functional OKRs, then each like stream or team also have their own OKRs. And now we're focusing like, okay, we have company objectives, company KRs, which are purely cross-functional. And then we have cross-functional initiatives, that kind of input type of things that contribute into the outcome of OKRs. And that's all. So like everyone should align on this. And then like each small team can decide what is the best small framework for them. But this is like not important because all of the traction rituals, they are all just organized across these main 3 entities: objectives, key results, and initiatives. And yeah, I think that no matter the side of the business, I think like I'm curious to see how it's on the 5,000, 10,000, but I still see that it could be possible to just keep everyone focused on like this main list of things.
I really love that too, because immediately, I'm so sorry, I have to make this quick note. People always are thinking, how does this affect me? And if you have objectives, key results, initiatives, you can easily get that into like, what am I doing to contribute those things? Whereas if there's so many layers and you can't see yourself in the picture, it's really hard to then like participate in that. So I really dig that, Ilia. So sorry to interrupt.
No, I just wanted to add that I really like the format of PRD documents for product management, but we applied that to operations, like operations requirements document, where we could like synthesize and highlight everything related to specific direction that we're trying to take. I feel like another important thing to think about is to actually have ops roundtable within the organization itself, because you might find out that you have design ops, you have product ops, engineering ops, maybe sales ops. And I feel like we are doing all the same things, just from different lenses. And it's important to align not only across the product streams, but also within the operations. Some of the actionable insights there, to connect the dots between operations, you could visualize the employer experience and the product experience. and try to map out all the initiatives that like creative ops or design ops or product ops is doing, to see overlaps, to see places where we could collaborate together. You might hear a lot of times where like regarding staffing, planning, or maybe onboarding, some of the operations teams are already working. So by just working with them together, adding design voice, engineering voice into this like initiative will be a great an interesting collaboration point. But like I'm always an advocate for creating ops roundtables within the organization, not only focusing on the product, but also connecting things horizontally.
I love this idea of engaging stakeholders, Farid. And I found two things. I guess for me, I find it amusing, maybe because I'm laughing at myself a little bit whenever I go through this process. When we engage with people who aren't systems thinkers, but are systems designers in their own right, like designers, PMs, and engineers, I find that there's this funny dichotomy, which is on the one hand, there's often things that they deeply know or need that have never really bubbled their way up into the strategic planning conversation before. So they're actually novel to our understanding of ourselves as an organization, and those are always fun to discover. But there's this interesting thing in engaging with them, which is that, like many disciplines, it's easy to assume that you understand how to do it if you've never done it. And especially in ops, I don't think anyone is immune to that. So, I'll pick on engineers for a second. So engineers will be like, oh, well, you just do it this way. I'll go, yeah, that's what I thought too when I first tried to build that system. And then I ran into this and I ran into that and I ran into this. And they go, oh, I actually have seen that. So one of the things that I find interesting about strategic planning, especially when it comes to stakeholder engagement, is it's actually a chance to socialize some of the basic, simple principles that we've learned. Ariana, you talked about simplicity. We have a phrase here, which is, kind of similar to a principle in product management, which is publish your ops systems when they're so simple that you're embarrassed. So like we really try to put a system in front of someone when it feels impossibly light and thin and like probably not useful. And it's one of the things that only happens in my experience when you do that is that the person on the other side of the table becomes a partner because they can understand it right away. They feel comfortable commenting on it, engaging with it and playing with it and asking questions like, could we do something like X, Y, or Z? And in my earlier days as an ops person, my goal was to like anticipate all that and prove how smart I was and how helpful I could be. And I learned that actually prevented people from using the things that we built. So, I think that lesson is not only one, of course, that I remind myself all the time as an ops person, but I've actually learned to socialize with others and say, yeah, those are great ideas about how we can improve the system. I've learned that if we want other people to do it, we want to do the simplest version first. What would you think that would be? And it creates this kind of mutual appreciation that I think helps drive the collaboration that really helps build systems that people use and make their lives better.
I have a follow-up question because I'm like hearing one pager, like visualizing. What does this look like for you all? Like when you've got your OKRs for the year, like what form does it take visually? Because that's a key component of adoption, right? But like I feel like there might be some different strategies that could be interesting. What do you all do?
Thumbs up for Coda Doc.
So
Yeah,
I don't know how else
we
just
have it.
going is.
Let's get nerdy about Coda for a second. Are we talking call out boxes? Are we talking tables? Ilia, how do you like to present your pages?
Yeah, mostly tables, and I usually try to mix planning and traction in one place. Basically, we organize in tables with numbers, and then when you go inside the row, you can see all of the details there. But then traction is also the same place, just additional columns with updates and commenting updates, and then voting. And then we do meetings also when we discuss the progress on initiatives, OKRs, also by looking at Coda together and just reading through the updates. It's like Amazon style, and then collaborating together. So yeah, like I think all of the rituals around planning and traction mostly we do using Coda.
And we'll be publishing a doc about this pretty soon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, super
As
excited
someone
to get
who
this
is
one out.
very sad to no longer have access to Coda at work, we are very much in deck form. But I think also really rings true around simplicity. And I think people get really hung up on language too, especially with OKRs. You know, what is a key result? What is a KPI? People often confuse, key results for just activities. And so really trying to translate in a way that people will understand. So for our deck, we do, key results, but these are, we like to frame them as kind of hypothesis statements, which again, I think is something that really helps with flexibility down the line. So in order to achieve these things, our key results, we need to do these things, which are kind of like the initiatives or key activities, and then we'll measure our success by these KPIs. So we kind of bring a little bit more of a like human speak to those different headers. And that also gives us the flexibility to change. We thought that to achieve these things, these were the things we need to do. Metrics aren't proving that out. How are we going to pivot from there? So that kind of test and learn iterative process really helps. And then I think what's equally as important as keeping the upfront planning pretty lightweight is also that reporting cadence. I think sometimes I've seen teams spend more time prepping for a report out on their progress than they've actually spent making progress. And so really highlighting, if it's green, these are the 3 things that really made a difference and helped us move forward or proved out that hypothesis this quarter. If it's a yellow or red, love a stoplight system. This is what we're going to change. This is what we learned. Really trying to distill down so it feels really actionable. And leadership has a good sense of work tracking or, this is something I really need to pay attention to. But at least they've got a plan for how they're going to get back on track. So very much advocate for the lightweight and the simplicity and really trying to put it in language that people will understand. But oh my God, I wish we had Coda. I have been advocating since day one of joining this company.
I love your user story approach of writing the OKRs. It makes it feel like more human and more like actionable rather than like, what is an objective or a key result or like you got to put it into this column.
People get so lost in like the theoretical. Yeah. And this really allows it to be a multi-year journey as well. I think this is the first time I'm seeing us do that successfully where we have a picture of that end state and we start to prioritize, okay, these are the things we think we need to do to get there. And then that really allows you to build and test and learn over time. Because a lot of things that we try to change in this space are behaviors, which are really hard to move the needle on in 1 year. It's really hard to bring clear metrics around those things. That's still a nut we're trying to crack is how to measure behavior change. But I like the more flexible approach.
I'll toss something out there. Do we think as a group, or is there anyone that would have a different perspective, that strategic planning really is just behavior change planning?
Mm-hmm.
Philosophical.
I like to believe that in operations, we are the facilitators of change. So we are not the ones who are setting up the strategy in product, right, or any other places. But like if it's related to the like operation side, for sure there is like a strategic part of that as well. But I feel like if there are multiple programs, multiple products within the organization, sometimes it's also important to set up the right proper lighthouse teams who will be responsible for the strategy. And so far what I'm seeing a lot is that it's not only about the framework, but also like, as Brian mentioned, like how to help to facilitate the session or maybe some kind of workshop that will help specific program leads to define such metrics, to define the value, to define like what is the success might look like and what the strategy might look like. Are we keeping in mind what our competitors are doing right now, where the market is going, what kind of signals we see so far? So I feel like from operations perspective, one actionable insight here is not only setting up the framework, but also facilitating the sessions to define the metrics, to define the key results, to define the objectives that we would like to have. Because I see some teams are struggling, and the beauty of operations, because we are working horizontally, if we will see that there are some really good practices within like one specific program, we will share this knowledge to others and expand and like align the maturity across all the programs in the same way.
I'm going to jump back in and say
quiet for other folks.
I can hear pretty well. A little quiet.
Okay. It might be your Mac or your computer's audio versus your AirPods. Just a hypothesis.
God, we'll change it. Thank you.
I'm going to jump back in and just say I love this question so much. And I think, again, why I made this shift into employee experience was to think about that at scale, because I think so much of the goals of strategic planning or what you chart out to do requires behavior change internally. And how do you set teams up to navigate through that? I think one really interesting example, Adobe is very big in the AI space right now. And a big challenge we're thinking through as an EX team next year is, how do we set up our talent to be really mobile and agile so that we can get the right people on the right projects? You know, this stuff moves so fast. Over the course of a weekend, things could change exponentially, or some new idea could come up and we need to rally a team around it. So how do we help enable teams to meet that challenge? And it requires a lot of behavior change of how we think, how we organize, and I think that's such a powerful role for operations to play, is how do we help on that change management curve? How do we really think about the internal behavior change required to meet a lot of these objectives?
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think because by default, people do not like the change. And when we need to just implement change almost constantly, that's like very, very hard challenge. But I think that's also something that is needed more and more every year. And with AI transformation, that's also, like every month you see everything new. And then, okay, how the organizations can adapt to this, because it's no longer I do my small feature for 2 years. No, like I need to just iterate and change the approach and change the teams and change the goals. So yeah, that's huge.
And I think what's so interesting is the amount of change management we kind of know is required for automation or automating a process, implementing a new tool is already quite high. And so when you think about the change we're going to have to enable for that extra step of AI is pretty exponential leap. And I think we're going to have to really wrap our heads around what that new change curve looks like for people and how do we support through that process.
I'd love to chase that rabbit a little bit, John, if you're game. How does AI change operations? This is one I've been thinking about for a really long time. So maybe I'll just kick it off a little bit. For those who've maybe played with using AI in an operation, what I'm curious about was what surprised you when you started playing with it?
The human use case.
I'm happy to go first. So
I was going to say, like the applicable, like the pains that we immediately solve that were human. That's what surprised me. It's like, oh, dang, we could do that really quick. Is that long-term beneficial? I don't know. But it was like ooh, that kind of feeling that people saw, but then there wasn't the adoption afterwards. I don't know, Brian, if that's what you see on your side of things.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Whenever we talk to leaders who've gotten a mandate from their board to bring AI in, the first thing we tell them is the most common experience we have is we'll go in and show your team members that AI works. We'll show them proof that it's worked for other people, and then we'll run a test campaign or an activity with them and prove that it works for them. And then what you're going to find out is they still won't use it. And this isn't new. Anyone who's ever worked in ops knows that you can make people's lives dramatically better and they'll still use what they're used to. That's why Outlook exists. I think that this was one of my early disagreements with the ops community about 3-4 years ago. And I feel pretty good that I've dedicated my my own learning journey in this direction, which is that there are no ops challenges that are not also adoption challenges. So the real question is, what is adoption? And then what ops problems can I solve based on what I can get adopted? And that was very painful. I always wanted to make the case for like, this is really going to change your life. And if you just adopt it, everything will be better. And then I was like, oh yeah, the hardest problem to solve by far in product is adoption. And we've just learned over time to constrain what we build to what gets adopted. But we haven't really brought that mindset into ops as much. And I think in AI, it's shocking because when you use AI for a process, especially if it's been purpose built for that, it's shocking what it can do. So my surprise is that AI is a better writer than all of us. I think everybody reassured themselves last year, oh, well, AI can automate things, but human beings are creative. No, AI is way more creative in most of the things that it writes than a person will be. It can just take in more information and produce more succinct, with good prompt engineering, more succinct, more pattern recognition is there because it's borrowing from the internet. When you look at something, it feels easy to read, like you've seen it before. There's all these ways in which AI makes what we write and read much more accessible to each other. So the big surprise for me has been, oh, I want to use AI to do things like write status updates. So like in our project tracker, the team will update the table in Coda, what the status is in the prior and so on. But we actually have AI write the status update that's going to go out to leadership or stakeholders and so on, because it does a better job.
I like to come back to the point of I have a process or a piece of technology that's going to dramatically improve your life. You show it to someone, they say, wow, and they don't implement it. It's so common and so incredibly frustrating. And I feel like with a lot of tools like Zapier, for example, like if this, then that happens. It's like, it's very clear what the inputs and outputs are. You sit next to someone, you set it up, you wire it, and it's kind of running unless if something like throws an error, it's working for them. AI, I've sat next to people and it's like, there's wow, but there's also like this, it's unpredictable. And so you have to like massage it and work with it. And then you have them be like, oh, what I produced was like nothing like what we produced together. There's like this different sort of relationship. It's not really like a machine where you're like setting the commands, you can set an automation and then just hand it off to someone. It's like this weird relationship. Not, I'm saying I'm having relationships with AI, but it's like a much different conversation that you have with technology.
He's been a dad for 6 months,
I'm with you though too. Also, the quantity of data that you need to be able to prototype these things. Like I could prototype something with just, some basic inputs, but then to really show people the power, I'm like, it's a habit thing. You have to submit the weekly form so we get the status update. So then I can summarize, then it becomes a behavioral problem. So I could, set up this whole technical nerdy solution that I love and is using AI. But if the human behavior isn't there to give me the data to then use AI, then it just kind of like goes onto the shelf of like dead projects that really never got picked up. But everybody's quite annoyed. Why do we still have to manually update these project statuses? I'm like, it's like this catch-22 that ultimately it comes down to human behavior. It always comes down to adoption and how do you get people to adopt things? Also, that's very personality based as well. Like humans are the hardest thing to navigate, right? Like we're always the outliers in our own way. So how do we kind of like strategize? I don't know. For me, maybe you all have some good strategies. I'm a big humor person. Like I will highlight things or poke fun at things to bring some levity when things aren't happening or when we need to have adoption. What are some strategies that you have figured out to get people to adopt the thing so we can then build the ops better?
I feel like ultimately UI is such a big piece of that. And I was actually curious to the group because obviously AI, when that first became big trend in the past couple years, it's like ChatGPT, like, okay, that was very catchy because it's like, okay, I can ask a question, human words. But I feel like When I even think about the Coda AI features, it's a set of building blocks. So what are the building blocks that actually help, or how do you construct the building blocks in a way that actually enables these processes better? I'm curious for the group.
My favorite way of doing change management is community driven approach, where instead of going top to bottom approach, you are having bottom to up, where you are creating internal communities within an organization on a specific topic, where you can quickly find the early adopters and the people, the advocates who will be happy to promote the thing that you are trying to define. For example, having voice of the customer program set up within the organization, or design systems, or any other things. So I'm a fan of community-driven change, where you are engaging the individual contributors to do the thing, and then after they are agreeing and they are seeing the value in specific things, they are like scaling up and like advocating that within their internal teams as well. And just doing office hours, making it open, everyone could join. Another thing, I'm a fan of playbooks. This is like very actionable. Like playbook and knowledge base is two different things. Playbook facilitates the learning process, right? And if you have like a proper playbook in place that will be a part of the onboarding experience, you could like actually enable specific new ways of working within the organization easier.
Yeah, +1 to playbooks. It's changed my whole way of thinking.
Yeah. And another thing is the cool part about operations is that even if you will do internal newsletters within the organization, nobody will be able to unsubscribe from your newsletter. So you can just like share that to everyone who is responsible for product or design. Share your updates, like from operations perspective, like what kind of new things we've added, what kind of like new practices we have right now, and all of that. What are the achievements in specific programs?
I think I've seen one of the core parts of my practices is really focusing on sustaining the change. I feel like it gets so easily overlooked, and over time people end up like rubber band, just like revert back to old ways. So I think one key piece I found is always to kind of deprecate old tools and systems so that it's not easy to just revert back to those things, and that it's easier to adopt than it is to go backwards. And I mean, I have such mixed feelings about newsletters overall, but I love that idea of sustaining that change, keeping it top of mind. What's new? How do you really think about the long tail of it more than just the initial adoption? Because even if you get that initial adoption, that doesn't always mean it's going to last.
We learned an accidental hack with office hours that was so shocking, I have to share it. So office hours are really useful in that if people feel like they have a problem, they want to reach out and they want to get help. But then they have to go through a sign-up process, and then they have to show up. And it turns out that like knocks out 90% of the people who might otherwise be there. And the reason I know that is we accidentally sent out an office hour invite to the entire company, and over 70 people showed up. So I'm not sure what the right approach is in using this information, but it's really changed the way I think about the concept of office hours, that instead of it being a sign-up process, it's actually something that's just on everyone's calendar. And then they show up or they don't. And one of the reasons that I like that is that, in the classic sort of lurker, player, jailbreaker learning journey, the lurkers get to watch the players and the jailbreakers, and they get to see people show up and go, I actually have no idea what we're talking about. Can you explain it to me again? And so there's this way in which vulnerability and the willingness to be vulnerable isn't something that everyone feels that they can do in their work for all kinds of reasons. But if it can be modeled for them, or it can be sort of someone else is willing to take that risk, maybe they feel like they have a relationship with you, so they feel more comfortable being vulnerable with you, even in front of others. It really helps to melt the, I guess what I would say is, what is the opposite of adoption? I think the opposite of adoption is anxiety. When I really think about all the things we've ever done that have helped people adopt things, especially if what we did before didn't work, and then we changed something and it did, it was almost always something that just lowered the social anxiety for that individual around it.
Yeah, when I think of like what's the opposite of adoption, it's paralysis, which is caused by anxiety, where it's like it's just the stagnation of anything that's moving forward. And I totally think you're right. Sometimes in those kind of bigger settings, you have colleagues that you work with that are totally willing to call you out or ask questions or poke holes at things. And then you have people that is not the environment that they function in. One-on-ones for me with those folks in particular are always quite fruitful because they're like the silent killers. Like they come in, they're noticing all the things and then they'll report back when they're bugs, or they'll be like, I had this idea, but I don't know how to do it. And that takes a lot of time. Like I think many of us maybe feel like the adoption takes a lot of time, but if you start to like plant these individuals in different parts of the business to help bring back the adoption at different levels, it can be quite helpful and fruitful in the long run. Like some of my favorite people were so resistant at the beginning of any sort of adoption that I was doing, didn't like change. And then like a year later, like, hey, can we just automate me? I'm like, well, can't do that, or we're not quite there yet. But, you know, they're coming up with all the ideas. They're the ones that are stretching the limitations of technology and what we can do. And that's when I know that something's clicked and we've done something right.
I look for the cheerleaders and the skeptics. I love skeptics because skeptics are intrinsically driven by how things actually work. Those are the people you can actually most easily bring along.
That's how NPS is tracked too. You don't really care about the folks in the middle. You really only care about the detractors and strong advocates. All right, buy-in. I was just about to say our conversation is A, getting spicy and really fun, and also B, we're at the top of the hour. So I know some folks have to jump / go to bed. Really appreciate everyone. Reach out to me or I'll talk to you about like feedback for, I was about to say, there's probably going to be a next time. This was really fun. I enjoyed bringing it all together and looking to expand the ops community around Coda. So thanks for your time, everyone. This was a really fun experiment, and I'll let you know what's next.
Look forward to seeing you all again.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you.
All right. Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.